Hi, then, welcome to another episode on this season of the podcast. It's been, a wonderful season so far, and we've been considering, the first series in this season, which has been titled Standing Tall. And on this episode of this season, I'm going to be considering another topic in relation to what we've been discussing so far, and I've titled that the becoming. Speaking of the process that is involved in the journey to standing tall, and that's what we're going to be doubling down on in this episode. And without further ado, let's just dive right into it. So we all know that it really takes an effort to stand, literally, and so this tells us that there is an effort required on our part if we are going to stand tall. So if you're literally going to stand on your feet, it requires some amount of effort. You're not just going to magically find yourself standing on your feet. And so if you're going to stand tall, you're going to be successful, you're going to prosper at what you do, you're going to be phenomenal at what you do or who you want to be. It takes an effort. And we in previous episodes, we've talked about what it means to stand tall, and how that to stand tall you must stand for something. Also, we talked about the impact that conversations have on standing tall, the impact that conversation have on shaping our way on or our path to greatness. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about the process or the journey to greatness. So we need to understand that there's a process to everything in life. Nothing just magically happens. Whether we acknowledge it or not, whether we agree that that is the way it is or not, whether we can relate with it or not, nothing magically happens. There's a process to everything. The way we have light and darkness, the way we have night and day, it's all a process. The way a child grows, it's a process. The way the plants that we have around us grow, it's all a process. So nothing really magically happens. Even those things that we regard as miracles have their processes rooted in something that we cannot see. It becomes a miracle when we cannot explain it. But in the realm that makes it a possibility, it's a process. Whatever came together to make it available unto us is a process. So nothing really magically happens. And so everyone who wants to be great must go through the making process. That is the becoming. The process of becoming great, process of becoming who God has made you to be, the process of becoming who God has destined you to be. So it's all a process. And even God is a God of process. Right from creation, we can see the process deployed by God to put all things, including man, in its place. See, when God was going to create man, God made sure that all the resources that man was going to need was already, prepared. He didn't just make man and expect man to fend for himself. There was a process, that God already put in place to ensure that man can, live to his full potentials. God went out to create night and day, went out to create, the beasts of the field, the birds of the air. He went on to create the plants. He went on to create everything the man was going to need, or that man needs to actually be all that he has in mind for man to be. So God is a God of order, and God is a God of process as well. He doesn't jump steps. Even in the creation of man, it didn't just man didn't magically appear. There was a thought, first of all. and then there was the process of creation, and then there was the part, the crowning part, when it breathed, the breath of life into man, and then man became a living being. So there's a process to everything in life, and just like the analogy of the grain of wheat in John chapter 12 verse 24. I'd like us to read that scripture in John chapter 12 verse 24. So just a moment. Right here, John chapter 12 verse 24. I'm reading from the Amplified Translation. It says, I assure you and most solemnly say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone, just one grain, never more. But if it dies, it produces much grain and yields an harvest. Now, so what does it mean? I mean, some places might think, so what's the context we're trying to bring out of this? I'm trying to bring us to, try to picture the life cycle, of a plant. It all starts from planting that seed in the soil. And what happens when we plant the seed in the soil is it literally dies for it to sprout. And then in the process of planting to the point where it sprouts, there's a process. A lot of things happen to that seed. And then even when it sprouts, it's a process from the point where you begin to see, the air or the leaves, pop out of the soil. And then gradually, through the action of photosynthesis and many more other things, nutrient to the soil and all of that, it begins to grow. And eventually becomes, an healthy plant. All situations, being equal, all things being equal, it becomes an healthy plant that germinates properly and bears, more fruits, in the kind of the same seed that has been planted. And using, the grain illustration, the grain of wheat illustration. So what makes a fruitful field of wheat grain is that one seed of grain in different, portions of the soil was planted, and that is what gives that harvest. But then most times when you go to the market or you go out to buy, say, your grocery, you do not consider, or you do not even think about what was planted. You only think about what to buy. And that is the way life is. Most times people don't get to see the process. People don't get to see how that thing that you celebrate has come to be. We only see things from the surface. So for instance, I am a product designer, and some of the things I consider, or we consider, because I teach I teach people as well, the heart of product design, UI, UX. One of the things we consider is the element of UX design, and it all starts from the strategy up to the surface. But in between the strategy and the surface, there are many things to be considered right from strategy. But we get to understand that what many people see is the beauty of the surface. It's just like when you see a house too, a house in a prime location in your country or in your city. I mean, the house is beautiful, it's shining, it's classic, but not many people understand what goes on into building that kind of edifice. And that is the way life is. We celebrate the result, most times not the process. But we need to understand that we cannot, jump the process. It's just like the story of the crown and the cross. Everybody celebrates the crown of Jesus. It's been given a name greater than every other name, that at the mention of the name of Jesus, every knee shall bow and every tongue confess that Christ is Lord over all things in heaven and on earth and under the earth. But not so many people give a thought to what really happened to Jesus on the cross. Even from the point he was born, before the cross, the point he was born, all of that 33 years to the point where he died and then resurrected. We all see the resurrected King. Oh, hail the resurrected King. But even the death on the cross was not an easy thing. So that was a process to our salvation. So people receive the gift of salvation now. And we say we've been saved, by grace through faith, not of works, right? Lest anyone should boast. But then it was the process that one man had to go through that brought about that salvation. So nothing comes easy. Nothing just appears magically. There's a process to it. Now, the journey to becoming is necessarily not an easy one. I've said that, it's usually not an easy one. It's usually not an easy one. And you know what they say, that it is darkest just before dawn. Most times when people are going through the process, it is toughest, it is hardest, it is darkest just before the time of breakthrough. So it's usually not an easy one. You will see temptations, you will see challenges, you will see things that will make you doubt the verity of your purpose as you go on in that process. You see things that will discourage you, from your journey. So it's not an easy one. But we must understand that to stand tall, it's going to be rough. It's going to be rough. To stand tall is going to be rough. But then, just like Paul was saying in the Bible, that the sufferings of the present time are not worthy to be compared to the glory which shall be revealed. That is supposed to be our focus. To understand that the things that we go through now are not worth comparing to the glory that will be revealed. Now, and how we're able to survive that season is dependent on the picture of the future that is plastered on our minds, on our hearts. The picture of the future we've allowed our spirits, to reflect on our minds, right? And that is why it is important to be able to realize, see and figure out and understand what our purpose is on earth. That will give us the energy, the fire that is needed to push for the fulfillment of our destiny. And so in the face of the toughness and the uneasiness and the hardness and the harshness and the roughness of the process, there'll be something that we're hanging on to. There'll be something that our faith is anchored to. That is the picture of the glory which shall be revealed. And that was what Jesus held on to even on the cross. He saw beyond what was happening to him. He saw what was going to be revealed. He saw, the liberation of souls. He saw the freedom of man from the shackles of the devil. And he saw the end result. And that was worth the suffering for him. We should always, when I think about this, it brings me, to a hall, and then you just stand amazed at that great sacrifice of Jesus. Even when he had the chance to say, no, I'm not doing this, literally prayed and was like, if this cup would just pass over me. But then he thought about it and, Lord, let your will be done. We also need to understand that the journey to becoming, the process of becoming, is in stages, and it requires time. It requires discipline. It's not something that will just happen zoom, like all of a sudden. It requires time. It requires discipline. It requires tenacity. It requires commitment to stay dedicated to that process. You cannot skip, or jump the process. And it's really important to understand this. Time is required in this process. That is why it's called the process, because time is required. A lot of things are required. I mean, we have examples of people who try to cut corners in a journey of life, in a journey of destiny. But usually, if you look at them, the end is not usually good. The journey to becoming is a process that cannot be skipped. It's just like when you're in school. From your freshman year, you won't suddenly be promoted to the penultimate or the final year. The remaining number of years in between is a process that you must observe, that you must go through, so that you can be fully baked as someone who has truly mastered the art of the field that you put in or were admitted for. And that is what certifies you at the end as somebody who has been schooled and been taught and has gathered and mastered knowledge in that field. So it's not something we can jump, but we find people, and especially young ones like you, like me, or like many other persons listening to me, who really just want to jump the process. So people just want to automatically become the Jeff Bezos of today. Some persons just want to become, the Mark Zuckerberg of today. But if we talk to all of these people, even Elon Musk, all of these people will realize that they didn't just get to where they are, by the flick of a finger. They didn't just get there because everything was readily available to them. It was a process of time. It was a process of discipline. It was a process of tenacity, process of yielding to the process itself, embracing the process. So also we need to know that the process or the journey of becoming is a process of pruning, it's a process of purging, it's a process of trimming, it's a process of training. See, as you go and diligently submit yourself to the process, there are things that will be cut away from you. There are things that will be removed from you. There are things that will require reshaping and remolding. There are relationships that you will need to break away from. There are thought patterns that you will need to do away with. There are things that you're going to need to unlearn. There are things that you're going to need to relearn. There are things that you're going to need to learn. There are things that you're going to have to decide not to do again. There are things that you're going to take a decision to start to do. There are things that you're going to totally do away with. There are lifestyles or systems of thinking or patterns of behavior or mode of doing things that you will do away with as you submit yourself to the process. Because where you're going, in the realm or arena of standing tall, in the arena of giants, those things cannot stay there. They are not up to the standard of the kind of people who stand in that arena. So you're going to have to do away with them. And that is what the process is about. Removing, all of the bags and baggages of mediocrity from you and clothing you with the raiment and the garments of glory, of greatness. So it's important to understand that some things will be cut away from you, and it will be hard. It will really be hard. I can speak from experience. There are things that look pleasurable, things that feel good, that I've done in the past, but in this season of my life, those things have to be dropped. Some of them are not easy to drop because I'm attached, or I've been attached to those things, and they are literally hard to let go. The relationships I've had to distance myself from, and they're not easy, but then that needs to be done for me to progress to the level that God wants me to be and operate from. And it's important to understand this. And finally, I'd like to say that the becoming process must be embraced. If we want to truly stand tall, it must be embraced. So you cannot escape it. It's a pruning, trimming, purging process. It is not easy. It is not pleasurable. It's rough. It's tough. But then we must embrace it. Because if we don't embrace it, we will resent it. And when we resent it, we'll stop making progress. But we need to make progress to get to the arena of giants. So we must embrace it for us to truly get to that point where we can say and people can see truly that we're standing tall. It is important to note that everyone who we can see that is standing tall today went through the making process in their own way. Everyone or every system of structure of the world, every system of structure of the world that is thriving today went through a making process. Look at, earthen vessels, clay vessels. You see all these ceramics. They went through a process before, you then see them looking all beautiful, painted, sitting pretty, the corner of the house where you put them. Maybe as a vase or something, or vase. Look at gold. It's celebrated after it has gone through the furnace to remove all of the impurities. That is when gold is celebrated. That is when you can see how shiny gold is, and that is when you can judge, oh, it's 18 karat, it's 22 karat. Why? Because the impurities have been removed in the making process, in the furnace. So for you to get to that point where you're standing tall, for God to make you into who He wants you to be, He will take you through the furnace. He will take you through the crucible. He will go through fire. You'll go through fire. But then there's a consolation that we have, and not just a consolation, it's an assurance that He is with us at every point, at every step of the way, holding our hands. If only we'll trust in Him. Bible says to trust in the Lord with all of our hearts and all of our minds and all of our strength. To lean not on our own understanding. When we try to do it with our own understanding, we fall and we falter. But when we trust in Him, absolutely, even at the times when it begins to seem rough, when we get tired, then His strength will be sufficient for us. When we begin to get weak and weary, He'll strengthen us, and then we can mount up with wings as eagles. And then when we come out on the other side, we'll come out shining gold. We'll come out as an edifice, built up unto glory. So I want to challenge you, to stay true to the process, to embrace the process. I understand that it might not be easy on you. It literally isn't easy on anyone. I understand that it's rough. I understand that it is tough. I understand that things are not working for you the way you have planned or anticipated. I understand that you see people who are seemingly doing better than you are. But if you stay true to the process of becoming who God has made you to be, then you will see the glory of God. And one thing I also want us to understand and hold dear to our heart is, unto each and every one of us has been assigned a different journey. So the map to the fulfillment of your destiny is different from the map to the fulfillment of my destiny. The route to the fulfillment of your purpose is different from the route to the fulfillment of my purpose. And if we will hold this dear and follow the plans of God, follow the instructions of God, follow the leading of the Spirit of God, we will get to our destination in due time, in due season, as successes as conquerors that God has made us to be, as victors that God has made us to be, and not as victims. So I challenge you today. Stay true to the process. Embrace the process. Love the process. But proud of your making process, because you will soon tell the story of your process in the place of glory. If you've been blessed by this episode, I'd like you to comment your views, in the comment section. You could send me a DM on Twitter as well, to share your views on how this episode has blessed you, or previous episodes as well. And one thing I'd also love you to do is to share this episode with somebody who is also going through the making process, so that we can together, as a people, as friends, get to the land of glory, get to the arena of giants. God bless you. I'll see you in the next episode.